Viltrox kindly sent me this lens to make a video on, but there's really not that much to talk about. I mean, it's a 40mm prime lens with an f2.5 aperture, and it's pretty lightweight and very cheap, but besides that, it's kind of just a lens. So I think the only thing to talk about is really how it looks and how it performs. This lens has a construction that's pretty much 100% plastic, and it makes sense. It's a $170 lens, so in that price point, plastic is kind of what you get. I would usually consider a plastic lens to be a bad thing, but it's kind of nice because it makes the lens so small and so light and really portable. Like, you could throw this in any bag and completely forget about it, and because of that, I think that's a kind of nice feature, having the plastic lens. It does make it feel cheaper and less premium, but it's $170. Like, you really can't expect more than that. The focal length decision with this is a little bit interesting at 40mm, not a super normal focal length, but it's kind of a sweet spot between 35 and 50, where you have that in between where it doesn't feel too portraity, but you still get a little bit of that wide angle. I don't really want to say wide angle, but you get a little bit more of that freeing image than a 50mm, so I think it's pretty good. It works well for portraits, and it also works well for bigger landscape stuff. I have a 40mm lens on my rangefinder camera, and I really like it, so I think it does well here. I do think a 35mm would be more useful for more people, but hey, they went with 40mm. And having an aperture at f2.5 just gives you a little bit more light than that standard f2.8, so it's a nice addition. You really don't notice it too much. Like, let me stop down from, 2.5, 2.8, 2.5. It's a very minor difference, but it adds in just maybe like 5% more light or something. So yeah, if you're shooting in low light, it just gives you a little bit of benefit there. Not huge, but it doesn't hurt. A big selling point for this lens is obviously the fact that it has autofocus, which is pretty impressive for a lens of this price, this size, and for full frame sensors. So I think it's a pretty nice thing. I don't use autofocus too much, but it doesn't hurt to have. Most people love it, and it works pretty well, I have to say. It's not as good as native Sony lenses, obviously. I mean, honestly, for $170, that looks pretty good. It tracks you quick enough that you're not gonna be distracted by it. So I think that's all you really need with autofocus, and it's a really nice addition. But speaking of the lensing, one thing that I don't love about this lens is the minimum focus distance. I believe it says on there it's 1.12 feet, which doesn't sound like too much, but with a 40mm lens, that's not super close to your subject, and so if you're trying to get a close-up shot, it can definitely be a little bit limiting, especially on a prime lens. Usually those are able to have closer minimum focus distance because it's just one focal length. So that 1 foot minimum focus can be a bit limiting, but it's not the end of the world, and in most cases you won't even notice it. The focus ring seems pretty smooth, not the best in the world. Obviously it's very plasticky, but I say it works pretty dang well. Yeah, not bad. I honestly don't really know what else there is to say about the specifics of this lens. Like, really just look at the images and visuals and see what you think. I honestly think for this price point, it's not bad. The image is clear, there's not much color shift, the bokeh looks pretty good. I know that some people probably see a prime lens as a challenge because it's just a singular focal length, but I see it as a challenge in a good way. It just allows you to get more creative. You actually have to move your body to the subject to frame things differently. You can't just zoom in. So I think that allows for some different creativity if you want to look at it that way. This is kind of just a solid all-around cheap lens that you can throw on your camera and not worry about breaking. Like, I go on so many adventures where I don't really want to bring my camera because I feel like my lens might get damaged, but with this one it's like 170 bucks. I really don't care that much if this thing gets smashed up, and so I think it's just one of those good lenses to have for travel or situations where you don't want to break or lose a lens. I think this is really just one of those products that isn't really that distracting but isn't that exciting at the same time. So it kind of just does its job and does it decent enough that you don't notice it being bad. And that's all you really need. So check out this lens, link is below, and I will see you guys in the next video.